Said differently, I visit college campuses so you don't have to. We both have faith. I would argue you have a lot more faith than I do. You have a lot more blind faith to believe that everything around you, love, joy, peace, sadness, is all just a construct of neurons firing in your brain.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
We as Christians have hope that we are going to see our loved ones again, and that we will be in heaven, and that we will be in perfect peace, and that this is not it. In fact, there's something even better awaiting us. So I hope one day that you do seek to find something higher and better, that this is not all for us in our existence. Thank you so much.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you.
How do you want to be remembered?
If I die?
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing.
Secret fits just like glitter. It's hard to brush away. Bright light and it still shimmers like it was yesterday. And it falls like confetti. All of the memories explode like a hand grenade. And it's sweet and it's bitter. Grief, it's like glitter. Oh, what a mess it makes. What a mess it makes.
Probably should have saved that video until the end of the show. Yeah, that was a horrible mistake. Welcome to Cross Politic.
Wow.
Chocolate Knox, Pastor Toby, Gabe is out, but we have Pastor Wilson and Lennox Kalifungwa to help us today. If you're like me, you're probably still processing the assassination execution of Charlie Kirk, Christian father, Christian husband, while at the same time still trying to process everything that happened with Ariana Zarutska in North Carolina and that murder there on 9/11.
Right.
Right? A time of memorial for our country being under attack. And so there's a lot going on right now. So I'm very happy that you guys are here. Before we move on, I want to play something real quick. And I want to say something that's probably about the only good thing I have to say in the whole show. 2 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, there's a video of him talking about what his favorite Bible verse is, or at least one of them. And I thought this is really important.
My favorite verses, though, is Romans 8:28, which says that God works all things for good for those who love him. It's a very freeing and liberating verse for those of us that are Christians, because we believe that when things can be really bad, God is working it for his good, his perfect and pleasing will, which is a very, very hard teaching when you come across business closures or staff layoffs. But it's very liberating that God is working all things towards an ultimate good. So I love that, and it kind of is very freeing that I don't have to be in charge of everything. And there is a God, and I'm not him, and I surrender to his will. And I appreciate that.
One of the things that when I became a Presbyterian, one of the things that I started to really love was Westminster Confession, because it summarized so much of good biblical doctrine. And one of the things I leaned into was the decrees of God. And the decrees of God is eternal purpose according to the counsel of his own will, whereby for his own glory he has foreordained everything that has come to pass. And that has been one of the most anchoring things in my life, is to know that if God can get the glory out of his own son dying, right, and being raised from the dead, then surely God can get glory if we are in Christ from our deaths and from our lives. And so that's been one of the most encouraging things in this moment, and to see somebody else believe in that and holding to that gives this moment a lot of hope for me. But, you know, I don't think that we should, let me go here. Pastor, I am watching right now this moment. This to me is like a watershed moment in American history. And I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I want to be around wise, older Christian men who have kind of been here before. And I'm like, you've lived through the 60s, right? So, yeah, that wasn't like a super peaceful time.
Yeah, this is bringing back flashbacks of 68, but this is more tenuous than 68.
This is,
yeah.
Why is it?
There was still a lot of residual Christian assumptions in the population.
In the culture? I'm going to push that in a little more towards
you. In the culture and the population at large. There were a lot of people who were looking at how crazy the 60s turned into. But the craziness was largely limited to certain elite kids, Ivy League kids.
College campuses.
And the rest of the country was going, what? Wait.
What's happening?
What's happening? And the rot has permeated a lot more deeply. into American institutions and into the population generally. And I think such that we have genuinely two Americas now.
Yeah.
And significant population in both of them. In the 60s, it was one basic population with a radical cadre of communists who wanted to be disruptive, and they were effective at what they did, but they weren't able to do this level of openness. I mean, celebrate. There were assassinations that occurred. There have always been, around when you're in societies with a lot of power, there have always been assassinations and skullduggery and whatnot. But the thing that's striking about this moment is the open celebration of it across a wide spectrum of people.
You got media personalities, you've got politicians, you've got just random people in the communities.
A lot of school teachers.
School teachers.
That's been amazing to see.
Yeah. So we are much more divided. We're much closer to a tipping point. But I also believe that the radical left, in this case, the evil party, has way overplayed their hand.
Right.
And I was somewhat renowned before the last election for saying, don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. Because what I didn't want is for conservatives to do some radically stupid thing that would provide the excuse for cracking down, declaring martial law, whatever. The way they locked up Washington, D.C. after J6 and all the mileage they got out of J6.
Right.
What would they get out of a genuinely terrorist activity or riot from the right? So I didn't want us to do that because that would be taking the bait. They desperately wanted us to do something like that, and I desperately wanted us to not do something like that. But I don't think I don't think we're in a parallel situation now because the election is passed. It went our way, and I think this is an occasion where the left took the bait. They can't help themselves. They resort to violence. If they can't win the argument, their default drive is shut up, he explained. And there's one final definitive way to shut somebody up, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you have in Acts chapter 6. They couldn't answer Stephen or the wisdom with which he spoke. He bested them in debate. So we obviously have to kill him.
Right.
Yeah. That's and I think you guys jump in here if you want to, but part of what makes this to me hit a little different is that I think Charlie Kirk, people don't understand what he represents. There's two things here. The right has not been as violent as people expect us to be.
Right.
We got a lot of guns. We got a lot of ammo. We do this for fun. We have not relinquished they shut us down in COVID and we marched and sang psalms. I mean, come on, right? But this moment is a little different to me because what we saw in Charlie Kirk was ourselves, a Christian man who loved our country, right, who was trying to, a lot of ways, to restore back a lot of the virtue and the morality that we see in our society. And he decided to go to college campuses to talk to people, to create dialogue. There's so many clips of him online saying, hey, let's talk, because as soon as we stop talking, it gets hot.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but that's exactly why they wanted to kill him.
Right.
Right, because he did want the conversation. He was trying to talk, and he was gaining ground in one of their places that they have a stronghold in.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Charlie Kirk was a moderate.
Right. Yes.
Charlie Kirk was not an extremist. And of course, the left's play is whoever's running for president, anybody to Mitt Romney and the right is a Nazi.
Extremist.
If they get the nomination, they're a Nazi.
Right.
And Charlie Kirk was responsible. He was doing the very thing that all the advocates of free and open societies say that we ought to do.
Right.
Respectful dialogue. He let the other guy say his piece, and then you answer. Basically, free and open exchange of ideas. That's what he was all about. And they couldn't answer him, and they couldn't answer his arguments, and so they shot him.
I think he is arguably a major factor in Trump's reelection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly among young people. And so I think part of this is also them looking down the road and saying, if he keeps doing this, JD's in.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, this is 20 years too, right? Like, cause he's 31.
Yeah.
JD's in. Charlie Kirk, how is he not up next?
And then you got JD, and then a lot of people were talking.
Vice President JD.
Right. So I think that's the play. Is I think they saw this as like, we can't stop this. He's gaining ground. I saw comments online. I don't just hearsay, but Gavin Newsom's son is apparently a big fan of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so are they losing? Like, are the leftists actually losing their kids now because of his evangelism? Sort of in every sense. I mean, conservatism, the gospel.
Right.
It's a threat.
And so it seems like to me, because I was going to ask you about, because someone hit me up online and said, hey, I think we should take this bait. And that line to me is like, I know that line. That comes from
bait. Bait isn't a trap.
Right, exactly.
Let's not take bait.
Yeah, and so there is this question, like, so I think people are, especially conservatives, I think they've been radicalized.
Yeah.
And by this moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so so you're saying this is not the same sort of moment of taking a bait. This is different.
But let's define take the bait. What I mean by taking the bait is I say don't do something stupid.
Right. And you should never do anything stupid.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that's always a bad idea.
Even if it seems like direct action.
Right.
So the J6 incursion into the Capitol accomplished nothing for conservatives. Now, the left way overreacted and mistreated the protesters and all of that. But we gave them the opportunity to do that. So my definition of take the bait was something like J6. When I say don't take the bait, I do not mean don't fight. I mean fight. And here, I think we have to fight across the board until the Democratic Party is no more.
Right.
That's what I want to talk to you about. What does it look like to fight? Because there's this clip that I wasn't going to play any other clips online because there's a bunch of them, by the way, of people pouring out hate against against Charlie Kirk and then just saying horrible things. But this one video I thought was really important because I think it encapsulates the moment that we're actually in.
The sympathy for Charlie Kirk is weird. There seems to be this weird emphasis on taking the moral high ground and that you are somehow a better person if you're like, I feel bad for his family. This is the world he wanted and the world he was building. This is a white supremacist who wanted both of us dead. He was shot in the middle of saying something transphobic about trans people. And yet you want to have sympathy for him. You don't have to like violence, but I'm confused as to how you thought the revolution was going to be magically bloodless.
That right there.
Yeah. The revolution. That's insane. And I think this is revolutionary language. I think that's them saying the quiet part out loud. If you think about the world we live in, people have bought into this idea that life is basically a power play between the oppressed and the oppressor, right? That's Marxism. Coupled with the Darwinism that suggests that, it's the survival of the fittest, right? So get the power so you can survive.
Right.
And that's those are the kind of philosophies that undergird violence, right? Like the revolution that we're seeing now. And it's not principled on truth. It's not principled on anything virtuous whatsoever. It's meant to upend everything, right? That's what God's enemies do. They steal, they kill, and they destroy. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And I think that's exactly what Charlie Kirk was seeking to expose the lies. And he's speaking to people who have embraced lies to the degree to which they're trying to poison absolutely everything.
Yeah. Not only have they embraced lies, but they've embraced manifest lies.
Right.
Yes.
Like this person, this entity.
I'm going with man, who was very confused.
So he says, Charlie Kirk wanted me dead and you dead, people like us dead. Well, here, a simple question. How can you tell who wants who dead? Well, by who shoots who.
Right.
Right. So Charlie Kirk did everything he did in terms of persuasion and discussion and interaction. He did nothing violent. He did nothing to encourage violence. He didn't indicate that he wanted this gentleman dead, unless you go with some metaphor like dead naming. right?
Right,
He might go for dead naming, but he didn't want him dead, didn't want to shoot anybody. And the people who are celebrating someone getting shot on camera are saying, we're not the ones who want people dead. Well, you're the ones shooting people.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right. And I think to your point as well, Lennox, not only have they bought these lies, I think they've been ingrained in them such that they truly believe them. It's like, this is the only way to freedom.
Right.
This is freedom. The revolution is freedom. And if you don't keep the survival of the fittest thing going, if you don't keep the revolution going, then you are enslaved.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe in that sense is where they get this twisted notion of, and if I'm not free, I'm as good as dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't want to let me be who I think I am. You don't want to let me reinvent myself. Therefore, you want me dead.
Right.
But again, is just not simple. It's not that there's no moral equivalence there at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of what's striking about what the guy just said was that when you expect no blood in the middle of a revolution. And I think that's a wake-up call to remind everybody we're in a revolution right now. These people are literally, I mean, that's what we saw in church. They're trying to kill us now.
Right.
And I think a lot of Christians are looking like, wait a second, have we just gone hot?
Yeah. Not only do they want to kill us, but it's like that place in the Gospels where Jesus says, "That's why you want to kill me," and they said, "You're crazy. Who wants to kill you?"
Right. Yes. Yeah, nobody's trying to kill you guys. Yeah.
They said to the person who was going to be crucified,
who's going to be
killed.
Right.
And so, gaslighting is not just a 21st century phenomenon.
Right.
So then my question goes to then, how do you fight this? Because I think a lot of people are starting to come up with some ideas that some of them scare me a little bit. But I think you have a new group of people, a new Christian right that's starting to wake up and see they're actually trying to gun us down now. And then you have this left that's like, we're in the middle of a revolution. And I think we have a tipping point, no doubt about it. And I'm feeling like Trump better do something really quickly.
Right.
And I've been kind of a little judgmental of some of his moves, but I think the only way to stop what I think is coming is if he doesn't expedite justice quickly in some areas. At first, I was opposed to him coming to Chicago. Now I'm like, I think you have to. North Carolina, I think you have to. I think you're going to have to do some things that almost might seem a little tyrannical legally, I think, but it's going to feel tyrannical to people because if he doesn't, people are going to create their own form of justice in order to engage this.
Except that when Trump sent National Guardsmen into Los Angeles, it wasn't to knock heads and kick down doors.
Right.
What they did is basically, if you put a couple of National Guardsmen standing on this corner,
Right.
it sobers everybody up.
Has an effect.
It has an effect. So there were specific rules of engagement.
Right.
So you put National Guardsmen in Chicago, they would be allowed to defend themselves if attacked.
Right.
Yeah.
But all they would do is walk up and down the streets and basically say, and this is one of the key things I think we should say today. Sam Francis coined the phrase anarcho-tyranny. And anarcho-tyranny is where you have an establishment that foments and encourages anarchy from one sector of the population, the criminal class, and exercises draconian crackdown measures on the law-abiding class. So criminals are slapped on the wrist and let out. Rapists, murderers, they're sent out on the street again. But if you send out a mean tweet,
Right.
you get arrested at Heathrow. Right.
Right.
So if you're a Pakistani grooming gang abusing British girls, then nothing. But if you criticize the immigration policy of the UK, they come down on you like a ton of bricks. That's anarchy for one class, tyranny for the other.
Yeah.
And it keeps everything destabilized, and that's what they want.
Yeah.
And that's what has to go.
Do you think you said earlier you think the left has overplayed their hand, and I'm inclined to think the same thing. And what I'm thinking is I think this is maybe a moment where this all really blows up in their faces. We already have, was it MSNBC anchor that got fired for comments they made? I think I saw a college
Yeah,
somebody
professors have been fired.
Professor that got fired for comments they made, delighting in or in some way implying that he had it coming or something like this. But it seems like it's vile, and you've got guys like the guy that we just were on there. I mean, and that's actually one of the milder ones.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
I mean, there was I saw a video of a guy at the event who right after the shooting was dancing and saying something like we got him
right there in the front,
right there at the University of Utah. But I'm wondering. I think I agree with you, Knox, and what you're saying, Doug, as far as National Guard just standing there with some pretty careful rules of engagement. That's I think necessary, but I also wonder if we're in a moment where there's just going to be a tipping point in terms of just the run of the mill people who see a guy like Kirk, who's just like, again, not a politician, but just a normal guy, a young dad, a young husband. Happy, friendly, and I'm wondering how many, I don't know how many left of them there are, but sane liberals who say, I'm not, deal me out. I'm done with this, and simply start insisting on law and order. I'm wondering about this with the reports out of D.C. since Trump sent National Guard into D.C. is that crime has just absolutely plummeted.
Right.
And I'm wondering how many people in D.C. who have voted Democrat all their life are looking around and starting to say, "Wait,
this is kind of nice.
You can do this. You can actually stop it." And where you're at this point where I wonder if those kind of results and then the contrast of, or you can have more shootings or more random assassinations on Charlotte trains, or you can have you can walk outside at night and not be afraid for your life. Do you think we get to a tipping point there where the populist simply rises up and begins voting the bums out and saying, no, we insist on it. The police actually have to uphold the law, or does it have to be?
But see, there's another wrinkle here because there was a comment made. Some Politico in Carolina said, well, we have to do a better job of policing. And the police chief or somebody said, what do you mean? We arrested this guy 14 times.
Right.
What do you mean we have to police better?
Yeah.
We're not the ones who let him out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a judicial system problem.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the politicians, and then there's a DEI problem
Right.
of who are these judges? How did they get their position?
Right.
Are they qualified? So basically this is a systemic thing.
Right.
The rot goes into every
Right.
area of law enforcement, politicians, judges,
Right.
legal
That's
profession, and the cops.
So how do you root that stuff out? Because this is now just thinking about North Carolina right now. So the guy who killed Irina Zarutska, his mom was saying, don't let him, what are you doing? You let him out? Like, I don't know what to do with him, right? You have the judges there. They're the magistrate that let him go. These are not judges. From what I understand, these are just people who have been appointed by a party, but they never went to law school.
Right. There are states that you don't have to be legally trained to be a judge.
Right. And so that's not happening. Right. So you got all this going on there. And then North Carolina hasn't had the death penalty since 2006. And they got 124 people on death row to this day.
Right.
Right. And so, this is what I'm saying. Trump, whatever he has to do, he's going to have to do a lot in order for people not to feel like they need to lash out in trying to take back their country.
No, do a lot. How long did it take him to fix the border?
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of do a lot. It's just a matter of do.
Yeah.
So what do you do? It's like in North Carolina, what do you do? I mean, I've been, and so funny, I've always felt like a radical in one way or another. Like I'm a theonomist, and it's like I've been on the radical side for a long time. Now I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle.
You're a moderate.
Now I'm a moderate as a theonomist. I haven't changed, but everything's moved. And like there are people more radical than me. They're like, hang him. I'm like, I like to stone the guy personally with fast moving rocks. But what do you do? What does Trump do? Like in some place like North Carolina, like the jurisdiction isn't the same. They can't force North Carolina to execute justice.
I think there's a sense in which the solutions can't just be political. Like it's not just up to Trump. again, I mean, this is something I say.
Stone
often,
him!
But
Stone him!
no, but just an important principle that's important to understand is that the state of the culture is the resume of the church, for example, right? Like there's no escaping the necessity for people to bow the knee before Christ. And that has to happen at the cultural level as well. Politics tends to flow downstream from that. Now, a just state is seeking to reward the good and punish the evil, right? That's what Trump is called to do. That's what he must do faithfully. But I think beyond that, we actually need people to start assuming responsibility for the things God has called them to as well, right? So if we're just looking at the state and saying, hey, this is a problem, fix it, right? Well, there's a sense in which that's kind of what got us in this mess in the first place, right? And so I think there's no, on one hand, you can restrain evil and that should be done immediately, right? I think that's Trump's prerogative right now. Go do that.
As well as the states, the
as
state
well
governments.
as well as the state governments. That's exactly it. Right. Yeah. But I think beyond that, there's a sense in which everything that's happening now is exposing our own impotence, I'd say as Christians specifically, in addressing these things. I think that we have been too soft. We have basically built Christian doctrines around things like tolerance, for example. And that's exactly what's condemned the world over to ruin, right? We're the ones who've discipled the nation into chaos. Yeah. And there's just no solution beyond getting people's worship to be reordered towards the true and living God.
I also don't think that Trump has to do a ton. I think if he did what he did in L.A. and D.C. to Chicago, let's say he restores, and then there's 3 weekends in a row in Chicago where nobody dies of gunfire.
Right.
Which is an unheard of kind of state. Let's say he does that for 3 weeks in a row. And then he says, basically using the bully pulpit, saying to the people of Maryland, Baltimore can be just like Chicago.
Right.
And you have the capacity to do what I just did in Chicago,
right?
But not with your current leadership.
That's what leadership looks like.
This is doable. This is not something that is beyond the moon.
Right.
This is something, but so going to your point where Reformation and revival is necessary, is you need the kind of people who have the backbone that will do that.
Right.
And Trump is a unique specimen. We're not sure where he came from.
Yeah.
He's not a worldview guy.
Right.
But he's got all kinds of instincts that line up, I think, with when it comes to law and order and things like that, healthy instincts. And you can't expect that to replicate at all with regular people. And so what's going to be necessary is people being taught and being baptized and being taught in terms of God's law, and what does God require of us? What does God require of magistrates, and so on. That's
been really interesting to me too. I've been arguing, it seems like, with Christians, of all people, I've been arguing with Christians the most on the death penalty. Like, I've found that when I bring up the death penalty, some of my biggest detractors, or what do you call it? Detractors are Christians. Yeah. And I'm like, and here's a good example. Just to bring up his mom for a second, the guy who killed Irina Zarutska, his mom is begging. She's coming to the civil magistrate and saying, I don't know what to do with him. Guys, we have a Bible verse for this. Like, we have a Bible verse. And everybody makes fun of us because we're like, hey, if you guys believe in stoning children. Well, when the parents say my kid's a drunkard and he's out here being a menace to society and I don't know what to do with him, yes, that's what you're supposed to do with those type of children, right? Like, you're supposed to take them to the civil magistrate. Magistrate says, all right, we stoned them, they're done. We don't have this problem anymore. But nobody wants to follow that. Or, hey, we put these murderers to death, right? No, so we've forgotten what the Bible has requested of us to execute justice, and that's why we have the wrong type of fear.
Or we pridefully think that we're more just than God.
That's part of
those were the years when God had a pretty bad attitude.
Yeah. And we argue that we're more Christ-like than Christ,
right?
Because they will respond to your tirade by saying, well, that's in the Old Testament. Yeah. But Jesus in the Gospel of Mark quotes that passage.
Right.
He talks about whoever curses father or mother shall die the death.
Right.
And And he says, but you say,
Right.
you set aside the word of God for the sake of your tradition. So that angular verse from the Old Testament is one that modern Christians are embarrassed about, and they try to hide behind Jesus. But Jesus wasn't embarrassed about that passage at all. Right? And this goes back to another inescapable concept. It's not whether, but which.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not whether you're in favor of the death penalty. It's which people you want to die.
Exactly.
You're going to get it one way or the
You're
other.
going to have the death penalty.
Right.
You're either going to have the death penalty for being a Ukrainian refugee who was silly enough to ride the subway or the transit.
Yeah.
That's the death penalty for that. Or it's the death penalty for preying on people, for being a murderous, rapist, that sort of thing.
Right.
But you're going to have the death penalty.
Right.
In a society like ours, people will die.
Right.
And in an evil society, they don't care who it is.
Yeah.
And in a just society, they care who it is. So in Ecclesiastes, it says, where justice is not speedily executed upon the criminal, there the heart of man is filled to do evil.
Exactly.
And that's what we're confronted with.
And I think you're kind of seeing that in the culture as well, this desensitization to death, right? Like there's a sense in which this week's been very apparent, like it's revealed a lot, but I think it didn't start overnight. Like these leftists have been killing people for a long time, right? The bodies of millions of babies testify to that fact, right? So they've got no problem with death. They've got no problem with violence.
And they've been celebrating those deaths.
And they've been
too.
celebrating those deaths as well.
They've been shouting their abortions
Exactly.
and taking their abortion pills on video and all the rest of it. I noticed a few related to that. There've been a few calls from Christians. Stop sharing the videos of the Ukrainian girl being stabbed. Stop sharing the Charlie Kirk video. And I don't have any interest in delighting in the violence. I don't have any interest in unnecessarily dwelling on it. And at the same time, as Knox and I were talking about this, Knox, you pointed out that in a certain sense, this is kind of like we're kind of in that story at the end of Judges where the concubine has been raped and killed, and they cut her up in pieces and send the pieces all around the tribes.
Right.
And I think there's a healthy sense of no. Look at what your secular neutrality got you.
Right.
Look at what your deal with the lie of neutrality got you. What it gets you is as a dead dad. What it gets you is a widowed young lady, orphaned kids. It gets you a Ukrainian refugee murdered on a bus. That's what you get. If you turn from Christ and you say we're going to do it our own way, we don't need God's word, lip service to God, and that's it. Well, this is what you get, and which is why that concubine was cut up and sent all to the tribes. It's like look.
I think there's no question that we're at that kind of a moment.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, everybody, stare at what you just did.
Right.
And we've gotten to the point where this is another thing that has come back to bite the surveillance state. Like a lot of people were yelling for cops to have video cams on them.
Yep.
And then that lasted about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Turns out they weren't the violent ones.
It turns out that they were not the major problem. And there are times when the cops are a problem.
Right.
Because this is a fallen world. But, okay, we're not in favor of that. And all of these things have happened. That Ukrainian girl, that incident happened weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And
August 22nd.
And it wasn't until the video dropped.
yeah, somebody leaked the video.
Yeah, they tried to suppress that video.
Right. And so that is I think a marvelous example of you need to face the conclusions of your worldview. You need to see it in real time.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Ideas of
I think
consequences.
we are.
Yeah.
Right.
There's, I'm sorry, Lance. were you gonna
Yeah,
say
and I was just going to say, I think there's two examples I can give to that as well. I can think back to Emmett Till and how his mother
Yes.
wanted an open casket because she wanted people to see
Yes.
the atrocity of what, I guess, Jim Crow laws, would produce. That's one example. The other example is just the tactic that many anti-abortion institutions use in actually showing people,
Here's a baby.
This is what a baby looks like. I think a refusal to actually view the consequences of evil is an attempt to sort of redefine reality, Like people need to see
Right.
what is actually going on.
Right.
Because it's only in reckoning with the truth of that they can be any sort of change, any sort of repentance,
Yes.
and reformation. So it's
there's-
important.
There's two things that I've been thinking about a lot is the restoration of justice so we get the right people fearing again. Like we have the wrong people fearing. I don't want my daughters, I don't want my mother or anybody to fear to be out in public and all of a sudden they get stabbed. Like that, I don't want that at all. I want the other people to fear. There was a guy who was talking about, and I've used this example a lot. He finds sex trafficked victims and he goes and gets them. And he's like, it's getting hot out here. He's like, because when they know that we're here, all of a sudden everything starts moving. Like when they know that we're coming to get these girls, everybody gets quiet. Nobody wants to move around anymore. He's like, and just the threat of us alone and them knowing we're coming makes them slow their crimes down, makes them slow down the transportation. We are missing that desperately in America, which is why I want public executions. I want it to be public. I want them to see. I want bad guys to fear, again, justice.
And
right?
even more importantly, that's what God wants.
Amen. Amen. And I want the people to know that it's okay. We got you.
Yeah.
You're going to be safe around here.
Yeah.
Like, so that's one of the things I want too. And the other thing is the morality of our country. So I want a justice system that executes biblical justice, and I want a strong Christian church that helps bring virtue and morality back to the society, because watching those people after the girl got stabbed was like just as heartbreaking to me. The girl gets stabbed, and guys, you have to go watch a video. We can't play it because YouTube and all the other stuff like that, but I urge you to watch both videos. Watching Charlie Kirk's video, when I was watching the news, I watched so much news, and I was wondering what was wrong with the news. They're talking about this. I'm like, what's wrong with? They didn't show it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the same effect. And when I saw it, I remember like words came out of my mouth. Like when they said he was dead, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then watching this young girl fall from her chair after being stabbed, she didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And she fell out of her chair with her cell phone in her hand. And you can see she's trying to grab that thing to call for some help or get some help. And nobody there comes for 1 minute and 37 seconds. And by that time, some guy comes in here and grabs his shirt and tries to stop the bleeding with the young lady. But I mean, there's 3 guys there, 1 guy behind. And I get it might take you a minute, but what stops you from engaging to help her after he walks off?
Yeah.
That dude should have never made it off the train.
Right.
Right. Now, let me throw, not to disagree with your point about public executions, because I agree with it. But one of the things we always want to do is there's a ditch on both sides of the road. I don't like people. I think we must have executions. I don't like them being executed at midnight in the middle of a penitentiary.
I agree.
I think that there are problems with that.
Right.
And so I think execution should be public. The problem was, one of the reasons why we don't have them anymore is they turned into a circus. All right. So as a form of entertainment.
Oh, wow.
Okay, let's take the family down to watch the man die. And sort of a circus atmosphere, a happy atmosphere,
Almost like a coliseum.
Like let's see some blood. Now, this is there's always the ditch on both sides of the road. So the reason there was a recoil against that, I think an appropriate recoil against that, but then it recoiled into the opposite ditch of executions tucked away, done clinically, scientifically, and then no executions. Right. So I think it ought to be public in principle and not allow a circus atmosphere at all. You have 1,000 witnesses come, to see this done, and there'd be rules of decorum. Someone who bears the image of God is going to die, and it's going to be justice. But it's not going to be entertainment. Right. And so if we do that, I think that's a balanced position. And here's another place where I think we have to be careful, because I think we're at this tipping point. Vigorous execution of the law enforcement is, in the immediate nature of the case, a protection of the public from criminals.
Yes.
But if you zoom out, the big picture is protecting the criminals from the public.
No mob justice.
No mob justice.
Yeah.
Because when you get to the point of mob justice, you've got lynch mobs, you've got people doing all kinds of mayhem and not feeling bad about it at all, and not thinking rationally. No trials, they just cut to the chase, and basically, if the criminal class gets their way and they break down law and order, at some point the public will go up in a sheet of flame. Mm-hmm. And when the public goes up in the sheet of flame, a good portion of the public will become criminal. Right? In other words, they will become criminal for a short time in order to restore law and order, but it's not going to be pretty. And Kurt Schlichter says basically, pointing to this principle, you're not going to like, to the liberals, you're not going to like the new rules. These are the rules that you've been fomenting and implementing, and when there's finally this recoil, there's going to be a good bit of injustice in it. And, rough justice mingled in with injustice. Mm-hmm. And then I think everybody will come to their senses and say, we need a court system, but we need a court system that actually does its job. Right. Which is to visit justice upon the criminal.
Absolutely.
Right.
I keep thinking I'm always thinking either or. It's like if I have to choose one or the other, like I'd rather work through the morality of like, okay, guys, this is not a party. Right. Right. Like, let's stop that, but, but the justice system itself is so far removed from anything of giving justice. We punish the people who are the victims by making them pay for these guys to live on death row. Right. There is no justice to the people. Right. And so going down a prison system way, like, okay, we were talking about this. I think the options you have right now for biblical justice would be the death penalty, would be excommunication or what do you call
exile.
It? Exile. I'm fine with. That's not high on my list.
I was just wondering where you send somebody like that.
Epstein's Island.
El Salvador.
Right. You can put them all on Epstein's Island and say, you better not ever come out there. It won't be there for long. But we don't even think about floggings for the backs of fools.
Right.
Right. Like this is actually an option. Right. And we don't do that. And so there's nothing that's happening.
Well, not only do we, but we're twisted because we lock someone up for a nonviolent crime, property crime or something for 10 years.
Right. Yep.
Right. And if we had penal reform that, according to biblical law, and you said you pay the victim back plus 20% plus 20 lashes, right. Or you spend the next 10 years in the penitentiary, 99% of the inmates would take the flogging. Yeah. They would, because we have a different view of cruel and unusual. Right. Flogging, a rod for the back of fools, which is what Proverbs says, is humane.
Yes.
Right? It's humane. And we've got this scientific thing. It's called a penitentiary because they're supposed to go there and learn how to be penitent.
Right.
Doesn't seem to be working.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so we've got there's about 1 million men in North America locked up in dog kennels right now.
With cable TV.
And we, out of sight, out of mind. Right. We, if we were having to drive by slaves working the fields, we would know, okay, they're slaves. But we drive by penitentiaries.
Yeah.
They're all over the country, and we are abusing people, and it's not good to them. It's not good for society. It's not, So execution or restitution plus some corporal punishment or exile or fine. Yeah. And jail should only be in existence to hold someone until the trial. Right. If there's a flight risk.
Young man, your ambition is not a sin. You were created in the image of God and set in authority over all creation. And then you were commanded to fulfill a monumental task: to baptize, teach, and disciple the nations. This is the mission you were made for. But Jesus has taught us that the kind of ambition that will actually achieve this end must first be forged in the furnace of humility. For centuries, our fathers in the faith have been building this furnace to mentor and disciple upcoming generations of Christian leaders. This was where young men of great talent and promise sat at the feet of masters, reading the great works of Christendom, mentored by faithful men in the ways of wisdom. But as our nation has fallen from grace, so has our ambition. American colleges have ceased to be a forge for holy ambition and have instead become factories that are turning out useful cogs for the American workforce. Young men and women are no longer equipped to think and to lead culture, but instead are trained to perform soul-sucking, clock-punching, menial tasks. At New St. Andrews College, we are rebuilding the faithful forge of cultural leadership, the Christian Liberal Arts College. And we are calling all young men and women of ambition. Come, sit humbly at the feet of ancient wisdom. Come, be discipled by a faithful Christian community. Don't be ashamed of your ambition. Learn what you were made for. New St. Andrews College. Build, fight, win.
What do you, as pastors, and Lennox, this, you're probably over here looking like this is crazy. You're here, you're new here, right?
Oh, I love this.
But as pastor, I haven't finished processing the Arena Zarutska stuff yet. Like, I'm still processing that. But I definitely wasn't ready for the Charlie Kirk thing. Like, how are you guys as pastors dealing with this and working through this and processing this in this moment? Pastor Toby, I'm going to throw it at you first, but I had an interview yesterday to do a podcast, and I didn't have much to say at all.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't even know if I should be speaking at the moment because I'm still processing everything. I'm like, I don't want to say something because my emotions are high right now.
Right.
Because the target wasn't just on Charlie Kirk. It was on any Christian man that loves the Lord and loves his family. That's what the target is.
The reason Charlie Kirk was shot was for doing things that you guys do here on this show.
Right.
All the time.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And I think that's why it hits so hard. I talked with my civic students today at Logos just about what happened and just asking them what they thought. And I asked, President Trump, they tried to assassinate him a year ago, a little over a year ago,
a couple times.
And I said no, and that's awful. That's evil. Obviously, the fact that they failed, that's one significant difference. But I said, but does this hit different? And they all said, oh yeah. I said, why? And I think by and large it was because he's not a politician. He's just a guy like us. Mm-hmm. And he's young dad, young husband. He was just going on college campuses. And these are seniors in high school about to go to college. I mean, it's like that hits really close to home. And so I think this is a huge moment. I think this is a kind of 9/11 for our, for this next generation. I think this is going to be what they, one of the big things that they remember, like people remember JFK and other things like that. I think this is going to be one of those moments. And I think it's a moment when the murderous left, the violent left, just basically openly declared war on normal Christian Americans. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to run for office. You didn't have to have any power at all. You just wanted to have a conversation.
A man is a man. A woman is a woman. And don't kill babies.
Yeah, get married. And you just wanted to talk about it.
Yeah,
that's all you wanted to do was you just want to talk about it. And you realize if they're willing to kill him, they're willing to assassinate him, then they're willing to kill any one of us.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a moment where that just got displayed on a big screen.
Not only kill any one of us, but to kill any one of us and then defend it thereafter.
Yeah, and celebrate it.
And celebrate it.
Yeah, celebrate it. You had it coming to you. Yeah. Because of what you stand for, because of what you believe in, you wanted me to, the accusation, you wanted me to die. No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
Right.
But I think that is a big piece of this is a revelation of what has actually been true all along. In Proverbs, wisdom says, all who hate me love death. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been easy because of the Christian capital that we've had in our culture for so long. It's been easy to think that that's just a metaphor. And of course, if you're really involved, you knew abortion was going on, and so you knew, okay, that's where it is. They're hiding that too. They're hiding, all the corpses of these babies that they've chopped up into little pieces. They've been hiding that for decades. But it's kind of easy to sort of pretend that maybe that's just a metaphor. And everybody saw it with the cameras that were full display on Charlie Kirk, and they said, no. All who hate me really love death. They love death. And then afterwards, they celebrated the death. They celebrated it.
And we saw the beta testing, I think, of this in the assassination of that healthcare guy by Luigi.
Yes.
Luigi.
I know who you're talking
Maglione or whatever.
And he became a rock star celebrity on the left.
That's right.
And it was sort of what a marvelous person, sex symbol.
Hero.
Hero. And this is the beta testing for the introduction of assassination culture.
Right.
Make assassination culture cool.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
But this is where I think they've overplayed their hand, because I don't think they've got the juice to make anything cool now.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they've so discredited themselves during COVID and during lockdowns, and I think they don't have the juice that they thought they had.
I agree with that entirely. And you referenced Stephen earlier, and I do think that it's very possible that this is a kind of Stephen moment in our culture, where they couldn't win the argument, so they killed him. And I think, right after I think about just the horror of it and just the sadness and everything else, the very next thing I thought of yesterday, it was just okay. Back to what you said at the beginning, Westminster Confession, and what Charlie Kirk said was his favorite Bible verse. And I said, okay, nothing happens as an accident.
Right.
Not a single thing, and God doesn't waste anything.
Right. And I'm wondering, going back to the Stephen moment, I'm wondering what Apostle Paul is going to come out of this.
Yeah. Right.
Because
all of it.
Because when Stephen was debating the synagogue of the freedmen.
Yeah.
They were Jews from different parts of the Roman world, but one of the provinces they were from was Cilicia.
Right.
And Cilicia's principal city is Tarsus.
Where Paul's from.
And Paul, it's just evident from his writings, Paul is a world-class genius.
Yeah.
He's just and he was, according to his own testimony later in the pastorals, I was an insolent man, a blasphemer.
Right.
So he was an arrogant man who was absolutely brilliant, and who lost an argument to a deacon.
Right.
Yeah. So Stephen came out from behind the booth, wiping his hands on the apron, and then bested these guys in debate. And the first time Saul of Tarsus shows up is holding the cloaks of the ones throwing the stones.
Right.
Well, the ones throwing the stones were the witnesses.
Right.
But the witnesses were suborned. The witnesses were hired by the guys who lost the debate.
Right.
So I believe that Saul was one of those guys in the synagogue of the freedmen, and he lost the debate. And being that arrogant and that intelligent, he took it ill.
Right.
And then, so they kill Stephen, but Paul knows killing a man is not the same thing as refuting him. It's not the same thing as answering him.
Right.
And I'm expecting a lot of sort of an explosion of Charlie Kirk's ministry, teaching, testimony, video. And I'm also expecting people who initially applauded, they were all about it. They initially applauded, saying this is demented.
Right.
And God, and I'm speaking in secular political terms, but it's also Christian, a Damascus Road experience for people.
I agree with all that, and I would just add, one of the other things that the text says is they what's intended by a moment like this from the left is to get conservative Christians to shut up.
Yeah.
Right.
To be scared and shut up. And I think there's certainly a reasonable moment to regroup, check your security. How's your security at church?
Absolutely.
How's your security at your speaking events? There's a moment for that, and no worries there at all. But number one, I don't think that's going to happen at all.
Right.
And this is where I think they didn't do the math right on this. I think you're right. This is going to explode, and where you had one Charlie Kirk, I think you're going to have 1,000 now, or more. But in Acts, it says that after Stephen had been buried, it says that the church in Jerusalem was scattered, but it says, and everywhere they went, preaching Jesus.
Right.
So they had one problem in Jerusalem initially, and they tried to silence it.
Yep.
And that one problem turned into thousands of problems. Because remember, you had, thousands of baptized Christians by this point already, 3,000, 5,000. And they're like, well, I guess it's time to go home. They'd been there for the feast, and they go preaching everywhere. I think that it's very likely that that's the kind of thing that's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be explosive. And I wonder if, everybody's playing on it, and God tells the best stories. But Charlie's organization was called Turning Point. And Jesus promises that if a seed goes into the ground and dies, it will bear much fruit. And of course, he was talking about himself in the first instance, but all his people get the honor of imitating that.
Right.
Amen.
And so whether you go at 17 or 31 or 93, whenever the Lord assigns you that time, when your body goes into the ground, it goes into the ground like seed. And it's the promise is that in Christ, it's going to bear a whole lot of fruit. It's going to blossom. It's going to explode. And I think this is very likely a significant turning point for the Christian church in this land, for the conservative movement in this land. And they very well may have guaranteed unwittingly, the next 50 years being a conservative landslide.
Right.
Be revival
And
at this moment.
the other thing to keep in mind is however perverse it is for the left to be doing this and to be celebrating it and to be glorifying it, however perverse it is, think what an honor it is if you got killed and the enemies of God celebrated.
Yeah. They think they did something.
They think they did something. It's like the two witnesses in Revelation.
Right.
They get killed and everybody's happy and giving gifts to each other. And it's just like Christmas. And you really want to be that kind of person,
Right.
where that Charlie was privileged to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I think add one more thing here is the thing to remember is that when Jesus finally hunts down Paul of Tarsus, the thing you want to remember Jesus said to him is, why are you persecuting me?
Yeah.
And so in all of this, don't miss that this is all a proxy war. These people hate Christ.
Right.
They hate his gospel, but they can't get at Christ. They can't get him. They can't undo the resurrection. They can't crucify him again. They would if they could.
Right.
And so the next best thing they have are those who imitate Christ, who love Christ and who model that. And so that's why they hate us. And Jesus said, don't be surprised when they hate you.
That's also why they hate themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So, So if the God is the king living in the castle on the hill that the peasants in the valley can't get at, they hate him, but they don't have the resources to strike him. But they can burn him in effigy.
Right.
They can take his image in the village and burn that.
Right.
It's good.
And that's what they're doing when they persecute Christians. They're attacking the image of God. But that's also what they're doing with tranny surgeries.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's what that guy's doing to himself.
Right.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're taking the image of God, which in Genesis 1:27 and 28, in the image of God created he them, male and female, he created them. Male and female is the signature on God's image. And they're trying to scratch it out.
Yeah.
And so homosexuality, lesbianism, transsexuality, murder, the attack on the fruitfulness of the womb with abortion, all of that is a war on the image of God,
Right.
because they can't get at God.
Right.
And all this, though, is as horrific as it is, as demented as it is, one of the reasons we ought to have great hope in this moment that God is going to do something really marvelous is not only Romans 8:28, which he quoted earlier, but the fact that Jesus takes this personally. He takes attacks on him, particularly on those who bear his name, and do so cheerfully and gladly, like Charlie did. He takes it personally.
Yeah.
And in the immortal words of Johnny Cash, sooner or later, God will cut you down.
Yeah.
I mean, he's coming for you. And he hunts down in both ways. He strikes down and you go down into the dark, and he strikes down and he raises up.
Hound of heaven.
Yeah, and so I think we ought to be praying for a massive revival in this moment, a massive coming back to the Lord. We don't need a Christless conservatism. We need a conservatism that's full of Christ, the kind of conservatism that Charlie Kirk was representing.
Yeah.
But I think that they took,
they done messed up.
They done messed up, Aaron.
Yeah.
Something that a mentor of mine once told me, and he tells me this often, is, don't forget we're invincible until God says it's over. Right? Like there's a sense in which God's enemies are not running the play on this, right? Like we have a king who really is victorious, who really does have his enemies under his feet. Right. And we get to participate in what he's doing. And there's a sense in which what happened with Charlie is tragic, and yet it doesn't perplex the king. You know, the king, that was the king relieving Charlie of faithful duty in that moment.
That's right.
And I think if we had that kind of courage, reminding ourselves that it's God, it's our king calling the play, we'd be able to rise up and do exactly what we need to do in being faithful and fruitful.
They always think they're running things.
Yeah.
They're plotting.
Yeah.
Keep plotting. This time we've got them. And in Acts, of course, they say, that Pontius Pilate and the Jews, and they conspired together to do whatever it was that the king had determined beforehand that would be done, and nothing else.
Right.
Nothing else.
I normally end the show a particular way. Everybody knows how I normally end the show, but I'm going to let Charlie Kirk actually end the show today.
Okay.
The question is, will Christian men commit to what really matters, to the divine, to the beautiful, to the good, with courage and with purpose? The next time that you are confronted with saying the hard thing and the honest thing, and you know it comes at a price to your flesh or yourself, you say the true thing. The next time you see somebody who is suffering or is being treated unjustly and you can intervene, you do something about it. You stand up to the bully, you put your own neck on there, and you choose what is right over what is comfortable. The most masculine people that I know are the ones that go into places where they are not welcome, they were not invited, that they will be booed off stage, and they still proclaim the truth. That's what it means to be a man. They know that if men and Christian men start to recommit to the truths and the promises of the Bible, that this country can and will be saved. I hope we'll do it. God bless you guys. Thanks so much.